Well, we'll get started now. Today, we're going to be talking about disputing CVS deductions. And I'm breaking into new territory here in terms of retailers for us. So we're excited about that. Parker and I have been reading about CVS for a long time. And we're excited to finally kind of be engaging with some real numbers in terms of CVS deductions and disputing. So all of that, we're excited to kind of bring some of those findings to you today and to just talk about general best practices and all of that. So yes, Parker is our product manager for the CVS product, which, we'll do a little product preview at the end today too, if anyone's interested in that. And I am on the supplier wiki team, which means I'm more on the kind of educational content side of things. But we work together, us and product, all the time to try to create something that will be as helpful as possible for a wide variety of suppliers. In this case, CVS suppliers. All right, so a little bit more of that agenda. We're going to be going over some invoice code numbers and contacts, and a lot of this comes from a supplier-facing CVS document that we've kind of adapted some of that information from. So some of this should be pretty helpful for just kind of getting to the bottom of different invoice codes, trying to understand what they are, and who the appropriate contact is for whenever there's an issue with one of those invoice codes. Then we're going to be looking at AP deductions specifically, or warehouse payables, as we call them at CVS, and disputing those before moving into basically a Q&A section, if there's any questions at the end, and then the SupplyPike CVS product preview, which I've already kind of mentioned a little bit already. That's our next hour is looking like. Some common questions that we get during these: will we be getting a copy of the slide deck? Yes, you will, and a recording. So whatever the email was that signed up for this webinar, we'll be sending an email out in the next 3 to 4 business days with the copy of the slide deck and a recording. We also have a YouTube channel, which some people have found pretty helpful, that we upload all of our webinar recordings there so that people can watch them and kind of have access to them that way as well. So yeah, there's no need to take super vigorous notes. All of this will be available for reference later on too. We also have the Q&A tab and the chat as well. So you can put a question in the Q&A tab, and if you have more just kind of a general comment, or you're responding to one of the questions that we have on the webinars, that's what the chat is for. Supplier Wiki is the educational branch of SupplyPike pretty much. And so that's more kind of the me side between me and Parker. What we do is we're here to create webinars, ebooks, articles, any kind of medium of content that will contain helpful educational resources for getting started as a supplier, for best practices, depending on which retailer you're in or what kind of compliance programs you're dealing with. So all of that, that's what we're covering at Supplier Wiki. And SupplyPike is our the umbrella organization that we're working for, I suppose. And SupplyPike is more in the revenue loss space. So SupplyPike is about helping suppliers win back money that they've lost to invalid deductions, and having insight into the things that you can't win back, right? To understand why money is being lost in different sort of categories. Parker's background is in compliance on Walmart, on the Walmart side of things. So he knows a lot about that side of it too. So we like to boil this down into getting paid and getting better. On the one hand, you can, with SupplyPike, you can quickly figure out which money is being lost and how it's being lost, so that you can win it back pretty efficiently and effectively, or much more so than you could without the shipping documents integration. And then on the get better side of things, we want to give visibility into compliance, visibility into performance in a bunch of different kind of supplier performance areas. And there's all that. Yeah, so these are some of our partners. We like to work with a variety of partners in different categories, different sizes. The SupplyPike option, part of what makes it so exciting is just that it makes sense for a lot of different kinds of people, a wide variety of supplier profiles. So yeah, but take it away, Parker, CVS Deductions. I'll be interrupting you if we have any questions that are pertinent, but.
Sounds good, Peter. Thank you. Alrighty, so first let's kind of start with invoice code, numbers, and contacts. Like Peter had mentioned, this is a document from CVS directly to kind of help break down and understand what each type of invoice code means and the charge types associated with each of them. So we'll dive right in. So we pulled this information from the vendor contact list here. And so this was just kind of a helpful keystone for identifying and researching and disputing deductions. And so this can be found on the CVS Health kind of supplier website within the kind of home down to the node page. And it's called vendor contact list if you're looking for your own, or we've got a link here for you guys to go check out as well. And so what this kind of list breaks down is revenue loss in a variety of different categories. No specific order here, just kind of the order that we pulled from the list of this on this vendor contact form. But this list breaks down, different invoices that are associated to co-ops versus profit recovery, which are more like your post-audit type of stuff you may see other retailers. What we'll be focusing more on today is the warehouse payable side, or the AP deductions, as they're also called. And then also their supply chain performance is what the name CVS has for it, but that's more kind of similar to your compliance programs at other retailers. And then lastly, the other big thing here is returns and defectives and those kind of shared programs with CVS as well. So just kind of starting off with co-ops, if you have an invoice that begins with any of these kind of numbers or characters, you'll know that they are actually a co-op type of charge or like agreed upon advertising cost. So it's good to kind of keep an eye on these and check on these. These can be kind of found through Image Silo as a backup if you ever need kind of an additional reference, but CVS does go ahead and deduct these from your paychecks. But there is a way to get visibility into those. And also keep in mind, there is an option where if an invoice number ends with FSI, that would also still fall in this kind of co-op bucket here. And so, yeah, if those invoice numbers begin or end with any of those codes on the previous slide, you can also contact the co-op backup request at CVS Health if those aren't available in Image Silo. But if you do have access to the portal called Image Silo, a lot of those will be available there. But the email below is available as well. As far as profit recovery, these are kind of, like we said, more in the post-audit realm. So I believe they can go back as far as 3 years ago. And they kind of do this in monthly chunks and look back and see if CVS hasn't been paid for stuff that they thought they should be being paid for. So whether that's kind of an old agreed upon agreements, it could, dip into co-op or other return areas too as well. But it's just kind of CVS's way. I think the name comes from is CVS is recovering profit from themselves, to be honest. So quite an interesting name, but yeah, more in the kind of the post-audit realm here. So if your invoice number begins with any of these codes that you see on the screen, that's kind of what you're working with here. The more common ones are like the AT, the CC, any of the PR stuff there, or at the very bottom, the SB, and any combination of those are very common as well. And so there's also some additional contact information there. If you guys don't find backup of these in Image Silo, you can reach out to those specific emails, and they are usually in charge of kind of helping navigate these profit recovery invoices that you may be receiving. As for returns here, these would be invoices that begin with any of these combination of things. So like definitely keep in mind that there is a P here and an R here, but on the last slide for profit recovery, there was a PR. So just keep that in mind when you're searching around looking for returns and for profit recovery. There is some mismatch where there may be similar starts to an invoice number or to an invoice number. And so kind of categorizing and bucketing these charges on your side and taking note of them may be important to keep an eye on. So once again, these are also likely available in Image Silo. So that's kind of an important portal for backup on these for all of these kind of buckets. But definitely I would start there. If you don't find anything, there is this email below as well, where you can kind of reach back out about and learn more about what the agreed upon terms were for this return, or if you have questions about it, or you seem like maybe you got hit twice, you do need to email to dispute these as well. And I should say that for the other categories too. You can't dispute these through any kind of formal process yet, so you would want to reach out to the emails we have listed below as well if you were planning to try and dispute any of these, as well as get just kind of additional information. So we'll just kind of jump back and look. if you did want to kind of plan to dispute these would be the contact information for those as well. As for supply chain performance, this is like what we said was the compliance program. And so these would be invoices kind of beginning with anything you see here below. More commonly what people would be familiar with is anything that begins with that SCP at the bottom and ends with the AS, OT, or SP. The AS stands for some type of ASN related charge. OT is kind of a general term for on time and in full. So that includes the full bucket of OTIF there with that. And then the SP is for small parcel shipments. So keep that in mind when you're looking at those charges. So some of these will be available in that Traverse portal and can be disputed there, while others you may not have backup from the Traverse portal or will have visibility into all of them. So as you're kind of poking around through charges, I would be using the main CVS vendor portal to try and look for all supply chain performance charges first. And then if you want to go to Traverse from there and kind of see what is actually available, it should mostly be these kind of SCP, but I believe there's others of these kind of bunch that do fall in there as well. And it would be worthwhile to try and dispute if you guys felt like you had proof that something was on time or you did send the packing list. That's kind of what they're looking at here. But there's also an email available below. If you don't have a way to kind of dispute these through Traverse, you can reach out through that email kind of listed below. As for kind of what our main discussion today is going to be on and what SupplyPike has already kind of helped build a solution out for is the invoice numbers for AP deductions here. And so these AP deductions, also called warehouse payables, which you mentioned earlier, and also this includes direct store or DSD payables. All of these are going to end in either a V, a W, or an X. And so there's not too specific of what each of those kind of letters mean. But typically, you see a W is like a shortage or a case pack charge. The V may be more related to pricing. And the X, in some cases, is more actually them paying you back. If you did dispute this, they'll add like an X on the end. So they'll say WX or VX if they're paying it back. That's not 100% consistent. So keep an eye on that because there may be actual deductions that end in just an X. But most commonly, we see a W as kind of a leading AP deduction charge with the V on the end as well. And those aren't specific to any type of charge, but we do see trends where like shortages are more likely to end in a W and V is more likely to end in kind of pricing. So like I said, these can all be disputed in the SAP CVS vendor portal. And so that's also where you can have visibility into these. So that's a good place to start. There's also backup found in image silo for these charges as well. So definitely keep that in mind as you're investigating these. And these are kind of like the bread and butter we see at all retailers is, every retailer is going to have some type of process for shortages. So here's a kind of a nice segue into AP deductions at CVS. We'll take a look. And so like we've been saying, AP deductions, warehouse payables, same thing, kind of different terminology, but they are the same thing. And so the 5 major types, which I kind of briefly just mentioned, there's allowances, there's pricing, deductions, there's shortages, and there's also case pack deductions. There's also one other bucket called other, which kind of just is a general bucket for cash discounts, taxes, and fees. Not super common, but if you do have kind of stray charges that do end up ending in those W, X's, or V's that you're not sure about, it could be falling in this kind of other bucket here as well, and it may be worth disputing or researching further. More information just kind of on the SAP vendor portal or the CVS vendor portal. It has 4 main sections. We have the invoices tab, the payments tab. There's also just a general CVS vendor portal page, which kind of has a dashboard. And then there's the actual dispute management dashboard where you do most of your disputing and kind of can track old disputes and stuff like that. And so all of these sections are pretty vital. The one that's maybe not needed as much is that CVS vendor portal card. It's just more like kind of a general dashboard of your invoice volume, which may be helpful, but don't need to keep up with it super often compared to like actually tracking invoices and payments and your disputes. So if you were kind of doing research and you're in this SAP vendor portal or the CVS vendor portal, you would, be looking for warehouse payables or any of those charges for any matter. You can enter the payments tab or the invoices tab. Both of these, all these charges are going to be available in both. In some cases, the invoices tab may be more meaningful because if a deduction hasn't been actually transacted yet, it won't show up in the payments tab. So potentially some companies end up in a negative balance with CVS. And so they won't see these payments actually transacting. So they won't be getting paid and they also won't be getting deducted. So those won't show up in the payments tab. But if you're in good standing with CVS and you're still getting payments, all of the invoices you see in the invoice tab will be on some kind of payment tracked in the payments tab as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. But yeah, these deductions can kind of be found in both places. And so we're looking at the payments tab here. Typically, you'll kind of see like a bulk overall payment. And within that, you'll have like a sum of the invoices you're getting paid on, as well as individual transactions of each deduction as well within these kind of different overall vendor payments. So the drop down arrow selected in the image below is the way you can kind of dig into each individual vendor payment and can kind of get an idea as to what kind of built up to that overall payment, what was added, what was subtracted, and helps you kind of get a view of that. And so, like we said, you'll kind of see some potential deductions ending in a W or an X or a Y, and it'll also say vendor credit memo here instead of vendor payment. So it's worth keeping an eye on. And so, yeah, the date selections is a good point here too as well. You will have to set kind of your appropriate date ranges you want to. It's not going to load data in there automatically. So keep that in mind. And then the longer a date range you pick, of course, the longer it's going to take to load, but it's usually pretty responsive. And like we were saying, not to keep banging on the same drum here, but, AP deductions, which are our main focus today, are going to be the invoice numbers that end with a V and W or an X. So keep an eye out for those. As for disputing warehouse payables, this can all be done through this same portal we're looking at right now. We were just in the payments tab, but this can also be done in the same application, just kind of back to that home page. So once you've selected your vendor dispute management dashboard, and actually I'll go back real quick just to kind of show, here's that vendor dispute management dashboard there on the bottom part of this image. So we were previously looking at payments up at the top. There's also invoices available, which we talked about, but dispute management down below is where you'll actually do the disputing. So jumping back ahead. Once you're in this vendor dispute management dashboard, this page should load your previous disputes and kind of give you an overview of what those are looking like and the current status of them all, whether they're in progress, approved, denied, you name it. But if you want to start a new dispute, you're going to hit this initiate dispute button. And so once you've kind of found a deduction that you want to go ahead and go through this process with, you'll start there by hitting initiate dispute. Then once you're in the vendor dispute management dashboard, you're going to submit your debit memo reference number, which is basically the same thing as an invoice number. I like to keep including that kind of W or V or X on the end. So it'll be something like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 W is what I would be putting into the debit memo reference number. But you can also dispute without that trailing W on the end. It just makes it a little more clear like what deduction you're actually going after if you include that additional W, X, or V on there. Some other information they're going to request is the PO number, which can't be found from this portal, but can be found in Image Silo. So just keep that in mind. Your dispute amount can really be anything you set it to be. Obviously you don't want to submit more of a disputed amount or a higher dispute amount than what the actual deduction was. But there's not a ton of guardrails stopping you from doing that. So just keep that in mind, that entering the correct dispute amount or the dispute amount you want to try and actually win back. Keep that in mind for sure. The invoice date, this can be actually found from the same portal we're in right now. So we'd have that from the invoice number or from the invoice page or from the payment page. Those are both available places to grab that invoice date. And then the next thing they're going to request is a freight term. So this is just basically asking how you shipped. And so the options are prepaid, collect, UPS, or FedEx. And so the reason that UPS and FedEx are separate options is because they are small parcel shipment options. And so you just get to select between one of the 4 of those to help them review the dispute. It helps them kind of understand what documentation is needed to win that dispute and what they might be looking at here. And then lastly, you'll just kind of add your comment, which you see in this image here. And that's just kind of per that line. So there's also an option to add more rows if you want to dispute more than one at once. I typically recommend just kind of doing one at a time because you also have to add attachments and a kind of a general message too as well. So yeah, so that dispute form is broken into 3 phases. And so we were just looking at that invoices page where you kind of enter all that information we just talked about. So there's that debit memo reference number, which is the invoice number, the CVS PO number, dispute amount, invoice date, and freight term. And a comment is not required, but it is recommended just to kind of have something there to try and prove your case. It doesn't have to be super long, but it's definitely worth it. And then, yeah, you can dispute up to 500 lines per dispute form. Once again, don't know if I recommend that because there are, required proof attachments needed for each dispute, and they only allow you to add up to 10 attachments. So I would keep that in mind. But you can definitely do more than one at a time if you feel like it. Just know that like your attachments may get mixed up because they don't have a way to attach the attachments per kind of line there. And it's like overall 10 attachments for the whole dispute. And so kind of more in the dispute documentation side, once you've added all the lines you want to dispute, you then go to this next tab here in the middle. It'll say attachments. And that's where you just kind of go ahead and attach everything that's required. And so CVS advises specific document integrations for each of the kind of 5 different types. And so I think we'll talk about, what's required for each different deduction type here. So if you're disputing an allowance, they recommend a copy of a debit memo, which is what you get from Image Silo. They also recommend kind of a full copy of the invoice itself. So the debit memo is kind of more of a subset of the invoice, where it's like a small piece of what was actually deducted, versus the invoice would be like the whole invoice itself that may be included for the allowance itself. And then any additional supporting backup, if you have like allowance agreements or kind of email documentation, those are always good to include for this type of dispute. As for pricing, once again, you'll notice a trend that they recommend the debit memo again from Image Silo. So once again, Image Silo will have all debit memos, as well as you'll want to include a copy of the invoice. So that may be more of an internal thing you have to find. There's no current way that CVS has those stored. And then additionally for pricing, any pricing agreements or other kind of correspondence with approval or pricing change by a CVS merchant, that all helps a lot with this process and getting these reviewed. So definitely take the time to kind of look for anything like that would help those deductions. As for shortages, once again, copy of the debit memo. So this comes from Image Silo. Additionally, they're going to recommend you provide a CVS signed POD or BOL for each, or of the shipment itself for each deduction that's being disputed. And then additionally, they kind of recommend a packing list and an invoice. They're not required, but they are still recommended and may help in the dispute resolution process. So if you're able to consistently provide packing list and invoices, a full copy of the invoice, it does help with the review of these disputes. But as far as like kind of what is just minimum needed is just that debit memo from Image Silo and then like a signed POD or BOL goes a long way. When it does come to case pack, they do actually recommend all 4 of those ones from the shortage page we just talked about. So shortage maybe a little bit less required, but still some recommendations. For case pack, they do go ahead and kind of require all of these for you to be able to kind of get a dispute approved. So once again, copy of the debit memo from Image Silo, packing list or packing slips, which are sometimes included with BOLs. So keep that in mind. And then there's also, they ask for the copy of the invoice again. And then, of course, proof documentation like the POD, proof of delivery, or BOL, bill of lading, from each shipment that is kind of being disputed here. So definitely keep those all in mind with case pack. These are less common than shortages, but still see a good number of them. And I definitely would, strive to try and have all these documents for if you're disputing case pack. For the other group, this one, there's less kind of fleshed out on what is needed. So these would have to kind of approach individually, but include whatever you think may be relevant to kind of help prove if a cash discount, a fee, or a tax was taken uh, incorrectly. And so at a minimum, they're just going to require you provide like your invoice number, PO number, which was already required in the first steps of the dispute process. And then really just any other documentation that you may have that may prove that, one of those kind of categories in the other bucket here makes this charge invalid. And then the last phase here, and this is definitely optional, but there's also a spot to add an additional message. So in this message phase, you can add more information to this clarity. It has a bigger text box. And so this is more of like a spot to add like a bulk message if you're disputing like 10 deductions at once, or like we said, you can go up to 500, which is pretty crazy. This may be a good spot to explain, why you think these are all invalid, and maybe if you have a bunch of deductions that are similar or have a similar reason for being invalid, this would be the spot to kind of add a bulk message that explains why all of these are invalid. So definitely don't have to do this part of the phase. It's not needed, but it could be worth a shot to kind of add additional context if you were disputing kind of in bulk. Otherwise, if you're disputing just kind of one deduction at a time, you've already added a comment from this the earlier phase, so you may not need that here. And so, yeah, when your dispute is ready and you hit submit, CVS is going to validate that the information you entered matches the format they're expecting. So no typos with like adding commas or periods that weren't expected in dollar amounts, or it could be anything formatting wise, like your invoice number matches what they would expect for the typical invoice format. They're checking for a couple different things there. So they do validate it, and then they kind of make you confirm your dispute one last time. So if you hit submit, they're going to do one last validation check and then make you confirm your submit. So keep that in mind, that you have to kind of do all that. Once your dispute is filed, there are only two statuses that they kind of display on the high level view of the deductions, and that's going to be in process and complete. So definitely dig into those further. Like for something that's complete, if you actually click into the dispute, you'll be able to uncover like whether something was actually approved or denied, or if you disputed multiple lines. Part of it may be in process, part of it may be already approved and denied. So definitely get into the details of each dispute too as well. As just some kind of research we've looked into for common kind of reasons for denial, stuff to keep in mind for sure. We kind of go under the assumption that you can dispute as far as 2 years ago. We've seen other companies have success disputing as old as 2 years ago, and that's kind of in line with other retailers as well. But this first one, if you are disputing like a collect shipment using a BOL as your dispute proof, those due to seem expire after about 9 months. So if you are disputing kind of a collect freight shipment and using BOL as your proof, just note those do expire at about that 9-month mark. So you may need to include a POD if you're going to try and dispute anything older than 9 months. That's a collect shipment. Otherwise, if you didn't provide a POD, that's a common denial reason in general. So keep that in mind. Or if the POD you did provide shows it was signed short and didn't actually prove the deduction was invalid, that's a common denial reason we see as well. Sometimes CVS actually gets ahead of themselves and goes ahead and pays back some of these charges. So you may kind of spend some time validating that before you dispute, see and check either the invoices page or the payments tab for that same invoice number and see if there was like ever a payment back on those, but that would be available there as well. Also, if you just have duplicate disputes, or again, it's kind of similar language to the last one, but if they've already paid back for the dispute, they're going to deny your dispute again. And in some cases, they say the product was returned. So maybe like you guys tried to ship it and they didn't actually receive it at the DC. And CVS sometimes has proof of that. So they may deny it if they have that proof on their side. So that's a common denial reason we have seen. This last one, or the second to last one, sealed pallets shipped and delivered intact. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but I think it's likely something to do with that they weren't able to actually receive and confirm that the shipment was actually received at the DC. And then the last thing here is if you're disputing stuff that's just not an AP deduction, so it's not an invoice ending with a W, X, or V, they're going to go ahead and deny that because it does not belong in this portal. They only accept kind of AP deduction disputes in this portal. So if you're disputing something that's not an AP deduction that maybe falls in the return or co-op or compliance or post-audit bucket, those all need to be kind of disputed through email, or like in the compliance case, those can be disputed through Traverse. As for some kind of partial approval language you sometimes see, occasionally you may have actually had a true shortage, but if you did send a substitute item found, or did send a substitute item, they might find that and actually go ahead and pay you back if they kind of agreed upon that substitute item replacing the item that was missing that you guys did ship or didn't ship in that case. Sometimes they'll also go ahead and pay you back if they found that you sent more on a different item, and there was an overage found, and so they'll just go ahead and partially pay back. Or in some cases, they'll actually just kind of recommend you go ahead and rebill for overages in that case. So definitely go ahead and try and get paid if you do guys send more than what was expected on an item, but that is available as well. So you can always email warehousepayables@cvshealth.com, and they'll kind of help you invoice for the overages that you may have sent. I think that's all I have, but we can do a live Q&A here for sure.
Yep, that's it. We also haven't had any questions in the Q&A yet, so go ahead and get those in now if you can. I think what we'll do in the meantime, though, is go on to the next slide and put our emails up there too, so that y'all can just send questions directly to our emails if that would be preferable. And then I think what we should do is we can get into the product preview section of it a little early and try to close out before the top of the hour, if that works with you, Parker.
Yeah, sounds great.
Oh, sorry. I'll just mention this real quick. Some supplier wiki resources, if you're unfamiliar with us and kind of the sorts of topics that we covered, this is a good kind of range here between different retailers and different sort of component parts of being a supplier in major retailers. So you can go ahead and check that out as well. And I believe the next slide is a little bit more about our product. So go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, just kind of segue to what SupplyPike does. We've actually built a solution to kind of help the disputing process for AP deductions. So if you want to stop losing money to CVS and then make sure you're getting paid and not incorrectly charged, we do have a solution for that. So we'll go ahead and dive in here. Just kind of some quick common disputing pain points. We talked about a lot of different charges today. And for a lot of companies, on average, we're seeing about 20% of your revenue is lost to all of those different kind of buckets of charges, whether that's returns, co-ops, these AP deductions we're talking about kind of in bulk today, compliance, and then as well as post-audit. As for the kind of the AP disputing process, it can be a lot to go get all those documents and have to log into multiple portals to get all the kind of data inputs that are required for each dispute. So we've kind of tracked that down. It takes about an average of 30 minutes to kind of dispute each single deduction, which can be very time consuming. So we've kind of built a platform that kind of helps do all the heavy lifting for you and pull all the data into one spot and grab all those documents for you to streamline the process. So we'll dive in here and look at our solution with a quick product preview. Alrighty, so here we are looking at SupplyPike. You can see our whole suite of retailers on the left side. We are currently in the CVS solution. And so to start, we do have a dashboard available, kind of breaking down the total deductions received, what we consider actionable, how much of those are approved, and just kind of a general win rate. We'll break it down on like what's not been disputed, what's currently being researched by CVS and was disputed, what's in a supplier action status so that you guys have more additional follow-up to do. And then your kind of breakdown of approved versus denied. And our goal here is to kind of help you guys improve those win rates and also just get disputes submitted on deductions that we think are invalid. Our dashboard also breaks down kind of by different charge types. We talked about how there were shortages, pricing, case pack, and allowances, and that other bucket too as well. So we'll break it down here in the dashboard as well into these buckets. You can also view your deductions by buckets of amount. whether that's by amount or count of like, oh, we had 11 deductions under $100 or 139 between this range, and then like 550 over $1,000. So just kind of see the size of your pain points, and then how big these deductions can be. As for our solution, we do connect to that CVS vendor portal and image silo to kind of tell a full story of what we're looking at here. And so we're pulling in deductions that have that W or that X on the end that we talked about, or even that V in some cases where they have a WV, and are categorizing these as pricing, shortage. So we have a variety of filters to kind of break it down by what you're hoping to see here, and in dispute. And so in this case, our new tab here is going to be anything that's not disputed. And so you can, review a deduction in the details page here, kind of get some more summary information of that actual purchase order itself. And then we have our kind of dispute form as well, where you can add additional reasons. We have a default reason, just kind of please repay based on these attachments. And then we'll be pulling in and connecting to carrier portals to grab like the proof of deliveries or the packing list or the invoices if you guys are sharing those with us. So we'll automatically save you the time of having to go grab those yourselves, and those will be automatically attached here. Otherwise, we also have the option to either add internal notes. So if you're working with a team and want to do research on each deduction, you can kind of add notes there. As well as if you're like, we've researched this and we don't want to deal with this, you can archive deductions too and kind of get them out of your view and then focus on the next most important one in the dispute process. So once you have your kind of dispute reason filled out, we're pulling information from Image Silo and the SAP vendor portal, and then the documents are attached. You're free to hit submit and fire away disputes with our solution. And so, yeah, we would pull in, like we said, all deductions that we've kind of tracked in the past 2 years. You're also welcome to kind of change your date frame if you want to dispute stuff that's more recent, or you want to make sure you're disputing stuff that's about to expire. Those are also options as well. So we've kind of built a robust solution to kind of help solve for all those areas of kind of deductions management with CVS. So once again, we're helping with AP deductions here. So that includes shortages, pricing, case pack, allowance, and other. We also have a kind of a general warehouse payable tag here too as well. In some cases, we may not be able to identify what a charge is. But in most cases, Image Silo is actually where we're learning what each deduction type is. So when you kind of identify a charge from the main CVS vendor portal, you'll only know that it was just kind of a broad warehouse payable or AP deduction charge. But once you've connected with Image Silo, that's when you can kind of understand, oh, this was specifically a shortage charge or a pricing charge or a case pack charge, and be able to kind of, and that's what our app is here to do as well, is categorize those for you. And then once you've disputed, those do go to in progress. And so they'll be in this kind of what we call a CVS research status. But if CVS ends up adding any additional comments, those then end up in this kind of follow-up bucket where you guys actually have to take additional actions on these disputes. Looks like we got no examples of this right now, but then from there, if you guys have added additional documentation or provided additional proof or whatever CVS is requesting kind of on a case-by-case basis, these deductions end up in resolved. And so we will show approved and denied deductions here in the resolve tab as well. Or if you just kind of want to look at all deductions all at once, that's what that all tab is for too as well. And so we can look based off of status. And there we have our approved examples too. And yeah, I think that's mostly it for a SupplyPike demo, but definitely feel free to contact us if you have any questions about the solution or just about today's presentation in general. And yeah, thank you all. That's all I have on my side.
Okay, great. Thanks, Parker. Yeah, don't hesitate to reach out if you guys have any questions about either the product or just kind of general CVS questions or other retailer questions, other content suggestions, areas that you'd like for us to cover. But that's it for us today. Have a good one.